Awe is a wondrous feeling. And there's a lot of ways to get that place. But the kind of awe I want to talk about is when you're immersed in an experience that takes you somewhere else. Somewhere that's peaceful, inspiring, transformative. I'm also going to be talking about paying attention. I know it's late in the day, but paying attention is where everything begins. A little background, I've always been involved in the arts as long as I can remember. I love the creative process. But my training in the arts tended to focus more on the creation of the thing and less on the reaction to the thing. Personally, I'm more interested in how my work can communicate with and affect others than I am in art for my part as an act of self-expression. For me, it's more of a dialogue and less of a monologue. So after I got out of school, I quit making art, and I began designing products that people use. In order to do this, we ended up having to learn the languages of a lot of different types of manufacturers and craftsmen, sales reps, and the clients as well, right? In order to create meaningful experiences. And during those conversations and working with lots of materials, I really grew fascinated with light and its ability to create really magical experiences for our environment. And it was light that brought me back to art. So after 20 years of working, designing product, I came back to art with the belief that art too can create an experience that is meaningful for the viewer. Only this time I really wanted that experience to be intentional. I began by feeding fiber optics through my artwork, creating pixels of light across large canvases. This time around, my art practice was not a solo act. I had to collaborate. I needed to learn new skills, dealing with electronics and circuitry. I needed to work with coders and electrical engineers. And in those collaborative conversations, the potential of the kind of experiences we could create really began to grow. About 10 years ago or so, I was offered a solo exhibition in Cologne, Germany, where we filled the gallery with these charcoal drawings of birds in flight. We embedded fiber optics into the imagery, so there were pixels of light along the wings and tails. And something happened at that exhibit that really caught my attention. About 2 weeks into the show, I got a call from the curator. She said that people were behaving very strangely. They were coming into the gallery, sitting on the floor. They weren't speaking to each other. They were staying for up to 3 hours and coming back multiple times. She would go out and try to talk to them about the artist. They could have cared less. They just wanted to be in the space with the work. Point of reference. The average amount of time that someone spends in a gallery or museum with a piece of artwork is 27 seconds. This behavior in Germany was not normal. There are times when things unexpected happen in your life and you can choose to pay attention or not. I could have shrugged and said, yeah, well, Germans, what do you expect? Right? Sorry for all the Germans in the audience. But instead, what happened was that designer part of my brain that is really interested in user experience woke up and said, what the hell is going on? And so I started looking for answers. We started by looking at research on art's effect on our bodies and on our health. Most people have had a transformative experience at some point in their lives when you view art. Early research had a term for this. It was called the Stendhal syndrome. And it was defined as a psychosomatic disorder in which the body experiences rapid heartbeat, dizziness, confusion, even hallucinations, when we see artwork that we find to be spectacularly beautiful or large in scale. Thank God, more recent research has revised that. Recent research shows us that the same thing that happens in your body when you view a loved one happens when we view artwork that we find to be particularly beautiful. Our brain releases dopamine, which makes us feel better, elevates our mood. Certain types of imagery, such as nature-based imagery or natural fractals, can substantially alleviate anxiety and aid in healing. More and more evidence is coming up every day as to the effects of art on our health. And art has been shown to have demonstrable evidence-based impact on our psychological and physiological health and well-being. Then we took a look at light. The LEDs that we used in the exhibition in Cologne, we had chosen because they were the brightest that we could find. It turns out that it was the same wavelength that is used often in light therapy to reduce depression. That took me into discussions with researchers in the fields of photobiology and lighting science who were studying particular wavelengths of light and their effect on the body. And how, we're going to get into the evolution part here and now, how over the course of millions of years in our evolution, how our bodies have become entrained to that 24-hour cycle of natural daylight. But what about all of those other cycles in our body that are less than 24 hours? So next, we took a look at what is referred to as new media art, which is actually dynamic light. It tends to be dynamic and interactive, and it engages the viewer in an immersive experience that tends to be deeper than static art does. The one thing about dynamic art is that it is popping up in galleries and museums all over the world at this point. I'm sure a lot of you have seen the Van Gogh experiences. These exhibitions are demanding a hefty fee to sold-out crowds. Could it be that our new enchantment to this type of artwork is linked to an earlier entrainment in our bodies to dynamic, that symphony of light, right? That symphony of dynamic light in the natural world? Could the external patterns and rhythms created by sunlight dancing across water or dappling through tree leaves actually be connected to internal rhythms in our bodies and brains? And could our kind of attraction to new media art and the dynamic light rhythms that we find in that work, could there be a connection there reminding us how connected we are to the natural world? So for the last 10 years, I've been working on creating work that creates an immersive experience in order that we might calm the viewer. About 2 years ago, the former president of Jefferson Health visited my studio, and he came with a request that I submit some proposals for some large-scale dynamic art installations for the new Jefferson Health building going up right now. That would have been a really good financial opportunity. But instead, I made a counteroffer. Why don't we do the research first? Why don't we find out what impact dynamic art might have on the patient? How does it engage them? How might it calm them? And then let's decide what should be commissioned. I talked earlier a bit about the kind of how much research is going on right now with art's effect on our bodies. But most of that research really focuses on work that is static, paintings, print, sculpture, and more recently what is termed distraction therapy, which uses virtual reality and is showing amazing and promising benefits in terms of pain management and alleviating anxiety. The main ingredient to distraction therapy is immersive experience. An immersive experience, what happens in the body during an immersive experience, is almost the same that happens in our body when we experience awe. We have an increase in our pro-social behavior, which makes us feel more connected to others, which makes us trust others more. There's also a decrease in our need for cognitive control, which means that we're more comfortable with uncertainty. Any of that would be beneficial in a healthcare environment. We believe that we can achieve similar outcomes using dynamic art. By making the work immersive, it creates a more engaging experience for the viewer. By removing the need of a VR headset, we can reach more patients across multiple platforms. And unlike distraction therapy, the viewer can choose their level of immersion, which gives them some sense of personal agency in environments where we feel we've lost almost all of it. So we've assembled a platform that involves artists, interactive designers, academics, researchers, and clinicians to study just that. The Jefferson Center of Immersive Arts for Health is a growing collaborative effort across 14 different academic, research, and clinical departments in which we're designing, prototyping, testing, and adapting dynamic art that can be used in the healthcare environment in order to provide a more optimal experience. But scientists are not particularly used to talking with others. Generally speaking, I know there's some scientists in the room. And artists, likewise, are not really used to talking with scientists. When I first started talking to scientists, I was really intimidated. I didn't know their language. I had to learn about the studies that they were doing. But what I found were that most of them are really intimidated to talk to me also, because they don't know my language or my field. What needs to happen is we need to be able to come to the table, right, and find common languages. We need to be able to listen across disciplines so that we can broaden the conversation. The truth is, we are all really like moths to a flame when it comes to our attraction to light. And that flame is not static. Nothing about life is static. Why should our environments be? We recently put together an exhibition of immersive art by 11 artists using dynamic light in some way. We set up the exhibition as individual waiting rooms where the visitors could come, sit down, engage with the work, and then give us feedback about their experience in terms through surveys that we had linked to QR codes with each installation. The exhibition had a range of work from videos to digital projection mapping to slow-moving mobiles that were casting shadows and light reflections slowly dancing across the room. But the thing about this kind of work is it takes time. It takes a level of commitment on the part of the viewer in order to engage in it. We're not used to spending time with art. We walk through galleries and museums today talking to whoever we're with about where we're going to go for lunch as we look over our shoulder at the art on the walls. What we found in this exhibition was that the viewer sat with the work anywhere from 3 minutes to 3 hours. So what we're looking at is spaces where that's possible. And those spaces are waiting rooms. They're the spaces where it's high stress, where people are confined for extended periods of time. When we asked in our surveys to describe their experiences, the words that they used overwhelmingly confirmed what we had anticipated, that they felt a feeling of calm, peacefulness, introspection. So we're moving forward, creating work that is dynamic. We're using abstract imagery that references nature, because that helps calm people, and we're using light to animate that imagery. We're making work that can function in healthcare settings where you don't have the luxury of turning all of the other lights off like you can in a gallery in order for the piece to function. We're putting work into some clinical settings where the stress is higher to test the results, and we're looking for external partner institutions to broaden our research conversation. So what's the takeaway from this story? Pay attention to the reaction of others. That's where we learn how people are reacting to what it is that we do and how we can build bigger ideas. Work across disciplines and find ways to have common languages, because that's really where it becomes so much fun. And never underestimate the ways in which we can create and experience awe intentionally. Thank you so much for your time.